What is up, down, and sideways, you beautiful people? We are back inside. It's League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you guys, going through another little bit of history as we're counting down the top 10, expanding it to 10 this time, top laners of all time. This is not current. This is not going forward. This is looking back in history and all time counting down the 10 best top laners.
Looking at the very top side of the map, the solo laners, what they have been doing on the island of top lane in their career. There have been some incredible players that have absolutely been game changers in the way that League of Legends has been played, the way professional League has been played. Time to give it the rundown, talk about all top 10 today.
Tank duty, split push duty, carry duty, 80 carry duty, even in some of these metas. Top lane truly has it all. And as we get to the first batch, 10 to 6, we're immediately cheating a little bit on this list, because right at number 10, I put Duke and I put Flame, and you know, I couldn't leave one of them out. I feel like they both had to be there, so you can call them 9.5 and 10 or 10 or 10.5, but before Duke was on SKT or the sub on IG, he was a carry top laner in his own right, picked up an MVP in the LCK, and for Flame, the term Flame Horizon, it's from this guy.
I love that both of them get to claim that the honorary number 10 spot wherever you want to put either one of them, accepting for it. Both of them had their legendary moments throughout their career. As you said, Duke, and what role that he played in those SKT dynasties and the championships that they were able to win. Unforgettable what he did there. And then again, his time with IG and how that worked out for him, filling in more of a substitutional type of role, change of pace, everything else in that way.
Mental reset for the shy, you know.
Everything else very important in that role. And then Flame, the role that he played, and as you mentioned, the Flame Horizon. I'm talking about his name and the job that it is to make an 100 CS deficit or more against your counterpart. Fantastic stuff from these two players. Absolutely treats to watch throughout their career, and happy that we get to celebrate them in a top 10 list.
Ahead of those legends, you have kind of two opposite ways that these guys got to the list. We're talking about Nuguri and Soaz. Soaz, obviously one of the greatest Western players of all time. A good chunk of his career coming, you know, prior to 2015 when the game looked a little bit different, but he still had these great moments on Origin, of course, when they went top 4, and then, of course, Fnatic after the 0-4 start. Week 1, he looked terrible. Week 2, he looked like an all-pro top laner again. And Nuguri is a guy who I feel like we both think will be higher on this list. We just need more games out of him.
Absolutely. Only time is going to help someone like Nuguri, because the accomplishments, the achievements, the excellency, it's pretty much a guaranteed. The way and the skill that Nuguri has, the way that he plays, that we are going to see that continue, and he will rise throughout the next couple of years on a list like this. Never mind an all-time, all-pro type of list that Nuguri could find himself on. So as you mentioned, the greatness, a lot of the highlights, the memorable moments that we want to talk about, they're from the earlier time in League of Legends. You're talking about, as you mentioned before, 2015, looking at his success, those big moments. But the one that I do, and you mentioned that I want to bring to a lot of people's attention, is probably some of the last memories a lot of people have of Soaz playing competitively, is seeing him at that 2017 World Championship, where he was absolutely getting blasted in that first week. Whether it was, you know, the skill, the strategies, everything coming across, not even just from the Gigabyte Marines. It was not a good week from him. But the championship mindset, that bounce back, the resiliency, and then, as you mentioned, really an all-pro level of skill able to be achieved in that crucial run for Fnatic to get them out of the get them to the group stage, in 2017. Soaz absolutely deservedly a legend in the game.
A classic coast through the regular season, take his level to a whole other stratosphere when the playoffs did end up rolling around. Ahead of him, technically we got 3 European roots when we're talking about the next 3 top laners, and 6 and 7. I know some people are probably going to think that Wonder seems a little bit high here. Maybe even Huni seems a little bit high. I think, you know, the top 3 to 4 here are all pretty close when it comes to top laners. But Huni, you talk about the first 3 years of his career, and I'm including SKT, because for whatever reason people are poo-pooing on his stint with SKT. He was really good on that squad.
people have some crazy selective memory if you're poo-pooing on the time that he spent with SKT. Coma absolutely had to crack out the belt to make sure that he was getting the maximum from a player like Huni. But it did work. He did find the maximum from someone like Huni and what he was able to do during his time on SKT. It's easy, to look at all the, couple of down moments towards the very end of it at that World Championship, but to forget the dominance that he was able to show before that. You mentioned, you have the days on Fnatic, the fun times, becoming, that rookie of the split, everything else, going over to Immortals. And I know not always the best of memories as we're getting towards his North American time, but even as you go to his second stint in North America, and you're talking about Echo Fox, Clutch Gaming, there are a lot of positives, and a lot of those positives are uniquely the positives that come with a player and a personality like Huni.
And another personality is absolutely Wonder, who's a spot ahead of him, and he's been around a long time now. 2016 we're talking about. He started with Splice, made the World Championship in his first year, and then 2018 on G2, before the super team of G2 was assembled. From there through the next 3 years, he was pretty much consistently and consensus year in and year out the best top laner in Europe. Yes, he got smashed by THESHY, but everybody did at that point. But he even showed up on the biggest stages against SKT, against some of the best teams in the world, with some insane picks, whether it's Pyke or Soraka in the top side.
Wonder and his success was absolutely essential for any of the type of accolades and achievements that G2 was able to put together in this last, little dominance type of mini dynasty, more or less, LEC dynasty at the very least, type of run. Wonder has been crucial to that, and his role in the top side from various champions, whether they're as meta as possible or as the ones that you mentioned, the Pyke, the Soraka, Lulu, whatever you want to go, that's outside of it. He can play that for the squad, willing to lay it down. Always the memes about World of Warcraft and how much time this guy is spending on his craft. I don't even care about that discussion. Go and look at his stats. Go look at the numbers. Go look at the achievements, the trophies in his cabinet, and what he has accomplished. My man, this is a very deserved spot for Wonder on the list.
Has to be in the conversation when you're talking about best top laners of all time. And with that, we get to the actual top 5 list. And in at number 5, you talk about longevity, peak performance, career accomplishments, all things you can look at on these lists. Marin is a guy you have to mention in this category, but for me, the reason he's as low as 5 is because of that longevity. Because 2015, you look at that whole year from start to finish, it's one of the most dominant that we've ever seen from a top laner. But before and after 2015, there's not as much to go off of for Marin.
If you were just going strictly, as you mentioned, off that 2015 season, well, then Marin is number 1. For me, that's who we're talking about. The example, the one that we always come back to, even years past from that. Looking back at that type of dominance in the top lane, just what an absolute beast he was in that solo side. There was nothing to be done by anybody in that regard, and that is the level of difference, just how good he was. And as you mentioned, though, this list is about longevity. So we can't give him too many points outside of that, because when you do look at some of these other years, his own individual performance alongside the teams that he was on was not up to that level. I mean, how could it possibly be up to that level when we are talking about it as, to me, arguably one of the single greatest seasons by a player of all time?
The only top laner to ever win World's MVP, and one of the rare players to kind of step out of the shadow of Faker and be the featured guy on an SKT lineup, before it's happened in years past, and we've had other rookies and such with T1. But Marin absolutely deserves to be on this list, but because we weren't talking about 3-4 years of sustained excellence, he's in at that number 5 spot. Now we're on to number 4, and you want to talk longevity. Well, this guy is the piece to look at. We are talking about Big Daddy Impact, top die. Lots of former and SKT top laners that we're going to be seeing on this list. Huni, Marin, now Impact we're all talking about. But world champion in 2013. I feel like people in 2014 thought he was washed up and it's time to come to the LCS and retire. And then all of a sudden, 7-8 years later, my guy is still playing at an incredibly high level.
You're right that this is Mr. Consistency when you're talking about top lane and top lane great level of performance from someone named Impact. My man, you mentioned it. The time on SKT, of course, remembering the World Championship. That's all great, but we do need to focus and talk about his time in the LCS, what he has done, and how he has consistently stayed at the very top, or in the top tier of North American top laners and who he's going up against, the varying levels of competition that it has been. But the important thing for me is when you go back to every international event that he has ever been at representing for North America, his performance, the way that he has laned, how he has held up against the very best that the other regions can throw against him. He has always stood his ground, stood the strong test for North America, and even at times been that winning condition, breaking out his own signature picks. My man, we can't be talking about Impact on this list without mentioning his Singed.
Yeah, and the Shen, a near 75% career win rate on the Shen pick. I kind of like Soaz. Impact's a guy who you can kind of fall asleep during the regular season. Maybe he's not playing at the highest level, but as soon as playoffs come around or an international event, he's again at that apex predator level of play. We've seen it on Cloud9, Team Liquid, Evil Geniuses in playoffs, and he's just been pretty much never below a top 3 top laner when he's come to the LCS.
Yeah, and we don't talk about it nearly enough, is the role and impact that he plays, Impact, as someone in the playoffs. When a series is going into the, that 4th, that 5th game, when everyone's being drained out, the mental edge is deflating, all these type of things. Impact is always at the very top of his game. The strategy, the communication. He has been someone that I've been extremely impressed with every single time that we've ever heard the voice comms in one of those tight situations in a playoff run.
Yeah, he's incredibly vocal, and former teammates have only had positive things to say about them. Still remains the only player to win an LCK and LCS title. 6 different teams he's played for, and he's performed at a high level on each and every one of them. Now, number 3. This is a bit of a peak performance plus a little bit of longevity. If you talk about Mara in 2015, obviously that peak level probably unmatched, but the closest you might get to is 2018, 2019, THESHY, and we had 3 full years where you could talk about him as maybe the best top laner in the world. The guy has really only played 9 LPL splits, and 5 of those, he was voted the first team all-pro top laner. More than half of the splits he's ever played, he's been the consensus best top laner.
I want to just flat out say that someone like THESHY and what he has accomplished, what he has shown us, is that he's Marin plus, right? He gives you that dominant level of a season for more than just one season. The problem is it's not that big. It's not the biggest slice of his career. It's only a percentage of his career that you can look at that type of level. And then I think some of the lows that we have
Oh, there's
seen
some low points.
the low points we have seen with someone like THESHY, a little lower than some of the ones that we did see during Marin's time or Marin's time as a featured player on a lot of lineups. So that's something to be taken into some type of consideration, but it's overwhelmed by those positive results from THESHY, what he did from pretty much 2018 to 2020, I would say, really, and maybe a little less, but 2018 really is that special year, especially during Worlds. What he was able to do, the dominance, the difference, the skill gap between him and everybody else was just so tremendous.
And he's a guy who people he's gone up against have had nightmares. You've heard Wonder joke about matching up against THESHY. He literally ended Sword's career in 2019. Even though IG wasn't as strong a team in that World Championship defending year of 2019, THESHY might have been even better than 2018. For 2 years, basically, this guy was must-see games. You wanted to tune into IG games just to see what kind of outplay he was going to perform, and it didn't even matter if he was on something like Sion. He was still making highlight reel plays.
And I know that this is not the metric that this type of list would be judged upon, but if you were to make, to say that we got to make a highlight reel out of the top 10 top laners, 50% or more would have to be THESHY, and the way that he plays, how flashy, how incredible some of those plays were. Of course, everybody is very familiar with the ones at the World Championship, but if you're watching in the LPL week in, week out, you were getting to see this type of mastery and just pure excellency across the rift from THESHY.
And the reason, okay, we hyped him up a lot. The reason he's not higher is, again, he's still got a relatively short career. And if you were doing a low light reel of all the top laners, I think 50% of them might be THESHY also.
That's a very fair argument, but again, that is the two sides of the coin that you were getting with THESHY, and he deserves his spot on this list, not only just by how good he has been when that coin is going your way, but the times that it did for that couple of years where it was seeming to be more consecutive in the good category from THESHY than the bad one.
And you feel like some of the picks that he has done, we love his Kalista top, all these, you weren't seeing him on Ornn duty ever. So a lot of the play style that IG did through the top side influenced how the game evolved from Season 8 onwards.
You can thank THESHY as being one of the top laners to say Riot finally should take a look at Klepto in the top lane. Maybe someone like THESHY and how he plays, utilizing this rune. That's not an okay gameplay mechanic.
That and, those AD carries, Yahoo saying, that's a pretty good idea. Maybe we should play a little bit more AD carries on that top side of the map. On to the top two. The big boys, the big cojones. And I've seen lists for top laners evolve over the years. And, I've seen them even from as recently as 2020. And people, for whatever reason, don't talk about Khan on these all-time lists. I have no idea how you could see this guy from what he did on Kingzone, Longzhu, SKT, Damwon, and how you do not have him in the conversation for greatest top laner of all time.
It's bonkers. I don't know what type of League of Legends or, what video game they're watching. They're watching Dota, my man. You're not watching. If you're saying that Khan is not in your top 10 top laners of all time, never mind your top 3 or top 2, wherever you want to put him in that situation. Khan extremely deserving of this. Put the last year that we can talk about, which is fantastic, his last run at it behind. You're looking at everything else before that, and it's still, how is there you not putting a man like Khan on this list? Very deserved. You talk about dominant, in-your-face aggression from that top side. Khan is, to me, the pinnacle of that level of gameplay in a top lane.
It feels like people were waiting for him to be washed up and no longer good. Even when this big revamp of SKT in 2019, it was like, okay, Khan, yeah, that's an upgrade for sure, but this isn't Longzhu or Kingzone level Khan that we're going to be getting. Sure enough, fantastic performance the whole year on SKT. Goes to FPX. Okay, doesn't quite have the year you're expecting, but there's still moments where you see him absolutely dominating. Some of his biggest highlights are actually from his time on FPX. And then with Damwon again, Nuguri leaves. It's a downgrade getting Khan over. And all he does is perform at an incredibly high level throughout the whole year. I know the lack of international success is not there for him, but it's really just not titles. He's been to finals, he's been to semifinals, he's been to MSI with 3 different teams. He didn't win the title in any of them, but there's so many other all-time greats that we've talked about that haven't gotten that crowning achievement of an international title, so you can't dock Khan as hard as people are.
I think the only reason that anybody really wants to be negative against Khan and really focusing in on his international career is they're looking at the expectations that people like ourselves and everybody else that is a fan of Khan, knows what he can bring, and how he plays, what that could mean for a team at an international event and looking to stack it up against everybody else's very best in the top lane. And Khan hasn't necessarily dominated the way that we've talked about at those the way that he does throughout the regular season, the way that we talk that he could do at these international events. And I think that's where people want to take things away from him and not realizing that, well, statistically, all of his performances are more than okay, if not at the very worst, average at a lot of these events. And that when their failure comes through, it's not because of Khan. It's not his decisions. It's not his play style, all these type of things. Play style, you might look at the failures of FPX when he was there and say, sure, the clash of the two, this is not exactly the best marriage, and that didn't work out. But when you're talking about times when he was with SKT and with Damwon most recently with Coach Koma, how he has been able to find the very best from an emotional player like Khan, absolutely That is the type of examples of why you can find Khan this high up on this type of list.
And much like THESHY, there was a 2-year stretch where you wanted to tune in to Longzhu and Kingzone games to see what Khan was going to do, because he was doing it against even 2017 era SKT. He's absolutely styling in that matchup, especially in those finals. And again, Dom 1 through to behind the SKT, FPX, the consistency was there throughout all those years. So absolutely deserving of that number 2 spot on this list, but not quite cracking that top dog spot. And that honor has to go to the man who was right before THESHY. It was almost the transition into THESHY coming around in 2018. For the 3 years before that, right after Marin and before THESHY, that entire 3-year era, it was SMEBs to dominate in the top lane.
SMEB, my man. This is why doing these type of lists is so much fun, because we get to reminisce about a player like SMEB. What a treat, what a legend, an elite level player SMEB really was, and I'm very happy to say that he takes our top spot in the top 10 top laners. What a career that he had. The highlights, everything is all in SMEB's favor. My man, the pinnacle of top lane class.
He was the man to dethrone Faker as the highest ranked player heading into the 2016 World Championship. Make of that what you will, but that was kind of consensus for most people previewing that event. Obviously, he lived up to the hype. We had the incredible Rocks versus SKT series, and then he goes, builds this super team on KT. Yes, there's their fair share of disappointments, but there's still no question those 2 years with KT, he was one of, if not still the best top laner in the world. And we love to think of that IG versus KT series at Worlds. He goes head to head with the Shy. I think people forget that the Shy gets subbed out for game 4 because he's getting a little bit tilted in that series.
I'll always consider myself so lucky that I was able to be there for that series and pull into the arena just at that moment where they're able to pull off the base race. You're able to see everything going through. What a series that was from SMEB late in his career. You mentioned back to 2016 when you're going through the top, the players to watch heading towards this event. And that was the first time really ever that you had someone going, well, you got to put him ahead of Faker. He's just that good. That's the type of level that SMEB was at back then, what we were talking about. Then, as you mentioned, building the KT super team alongside his friends. Ah, man, SMEB is just an absolute treat to get to talk about and think of as the top laner.
And anytime you're number 1 on any of these lists, one of the things you always want to talk about is innovation, right? And I think that's something that SMEB absolutely provided. Picks like Kennen were not necessarily a mainstay in the top lane, and there were countless, whether as split pushing comps, something like an Echo in the top side, the Kennen, again, as I highlighted. These are picks that SMEB excelled at and kind of made meta.
Oh, man, I love the Kennen picks from SMEB, what he was able to do. The big time ultimates that you're thinking about with Kennen, that's exactly the type of plays that SMEB was able to pull off. I think back to the times that he would be playing Rumble, even in the top side, and what we would get from him. It was really one of the best moments to get to watch what he was able to do and how he was able to do it for so long in the LCK and what he meant for his team.
Innovation, longevity, peak performance, and accomplishments, even though he didn't ever get that international title, a couple of LCK titles. SMEB deserving of that number 1 spot of the best top laners of all time. That is it today, though, for League Unlock. Erica Mark here with you guys. Thanks for hanging with us. Catch you on that flippity flip.